Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grim Flayer. Hope you're doing very well today, and I hope you're ready to join me on my first ever real foray into the ancient and powerful format of Legacy. Now, this is a donation league. We are playing the combo deck, Turbo Death. So it is still green-black. We are still interacting with cards like Thoughtseize, Duress, Abrupt Decay. You know, the deck has plenty of other tricks to play as well, but it is, of course, a combo deck and turbo combo indeed, hence the name. So this is a donation league, and it is funded by two very cool fellows, Mana Handler and Wizard of Lizard. So major shout out to those guys. The latter, Wizard of Lizard, is a BGX player who discovered my channel way back when I started posting full leagues for the first time, and he is somebody who got a lot of value out of that, so thank you so much, my friend, for supporting the content and for saying so. And Wizard introduced his buddy Mana Handler to the channel. Now, Mana Handler is not a BGX player, but he is a prowess player, so he does enjoy that angle of the content, and he's also the self-proclaimed that guy. He's that guy in the playgroup that tries to get all of his buddies into Legacy, and I suppose he thought he would try his hand at getting me into Legacy too. So thank you so much, guys, for funding this content. You know, they went above and beyond to make this happen, both in terms of the donation and in terms of other accommodations. So big shout out to Mana Handler and to Wizard of Lizard. Now let's talk a little bit about the deck. Okay, so for those who don't know, Dark Depths is both the namesake card and the signature combo piece. You can, in theory, spend 30 mana to remove 10 ice counters from Dark Depths and make yourself your very own Merit Lage, or is it Merit Lage? I'm so new to Legacy, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but legendary 2020 Black Avatar creature token with flying and indestructible can be yours for the low price of 30 mana, but nobody's got time for that, so we are going to combo with either Thespian Stage, which can copy Dark Depths, and you'll keep the copy, which due to the rules, due to the templating, will have no counters and will instantaneously be the sacrifice trigger will go on the stack, and then you will make your Merit Lage for free. Vampire Hexmage serves the same purpose and can in fact be much quicker by one full mana, which is a whole lot, but the casting cost of double black can be an issue, whereas Thespian Stage just needs 2 generic mana plus tapping the land itself. So Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth is a 4 of because turn 1 Urborg, turn 2 Depths into Hexmage means you're comboing off on turn 2. And Elvish Spirit Guide and Lotus Petal, the latter can fix the mana for the purposes of Hexmage, but either one can actually help facilitate in a combo on turn 2 by other ways, or indeed on turn 1, just by going Petal, using those to cast Hexmage, using Hexmage to remove the counters off of your turn 1 land drop of Dark Depth. So that is how the deck combos off, and that is how the deck wins. But what else is going on? Well, we have other utility lands to fetch, and when I say fetch, of course, we have our Bayous to fetch, which is something very exciting to me. I'm not used to playing with the old duels, but we can quote-unquote fetch other utility lands with cards like Crop Rotation, which also helps us play around wasteland effects, and Sylvan Scrying. So these type of land tutors can get us either of the missing combo pieces, but also Seijri Steppe, which can protect your Merit Lage from removal or get it through blockers to swing through for lethal. Bojuka Bog, which is not only a black land that kind of helps us develop a little bit, it also hoses the opposing graveyard. Ghost Quarter, to maybe force the issue on an opposing wasteland or punish a greedy mana base or break up Tron or Cloudposts or whatever goes on in this crazy format. And Karakas, which is actually good against, Thalia for tempo, but can also bounce the opposing Merit Lage in the mirror match. So we have a very utility-rich land base. I do like that. I've mentioned the fast mana Spirit Guide and Petal. These help us use our utility lands more aggressively while still being operational with mana, in addition to just powering out our combo that much quicker. Elvish Reclaimer is just a kind of a cute one of, it's a slower tutor effect, but a tutor effect nevertheless, a little bit more of a grindy card. I should mention here that Mana Handler and Wizard of Lizard gave me the option to play either Turbo Depths, which is what you see, and this is their list, I didn't change it, or Slow Deaths, which is just as common in Legacy from my glancing at the meta, maybe even a little bit more so, that plays like usually for Elvish Reclaimer and some other value cards like Dark Confidant. Maybe if I was an invested Legacy player, would prefer to play that, but being a noob, I said, well, why don't I just go full turbo combo mode? Because the longer the games go, the more complex the decision trees get. Well, as a new Legacy player, I'm probably not going to thrive there. So, but nevertheless, we do have a 1 of Elvish Reclaimer, which can be a really nice tool. We've mentioned the rotations, 4 of Pithing Needle. This is usually going to name Wasteland, especially for me, especially in the blind when I don't know exactly what I'm up against. I don't know every little thing that the opposing deck could have, but Pithing Needle, very important for hosing opponent strategies and protecting our combo from Wasteland, among other things. I mentioned interaction, 4 copies of Thoughtseize, 4 copies of Duress. So even though we are a turbo combo deck that can combo off on turn 1 and kill on turn 2, and even though we're not really grinding out value, we are still interacting, and discard is the premier way in which we interact. Already mentioned Sylvan Scrying, already mentioned Vampire Hexmage, which in addition to being the best combo piece with Dark Depths can also, it's a 2/1 first strike, it can block, it can even attack in some weird situations. In one very interesting game I had when I was very new to the deck, like my first day playing, I ended up winning under an Ensnaring Bridge, and I think it was with 2 hardcast Elvish Spirit Guides and 1 Vampire Hexmage going to beat town. Very interesting stuff. And, it has other use cases as well, removing counters off of Planeswalkers or Aether Vials. These things do come up. Finally, 3 copies of Not of This World, which is a free spell to cast in the context of using it to protect Merit Lage from a Karakas or a Swords to Plowshares or an Oko attempted elking, any number of other nefarious ways to beat our combo. Not of This World can protect it. Onto the sideboard, we have 3 copies of Abrupt Decay, which makes me very, very happy. Obviously, lots of use cases for this, but they include things like Pithing Needle, Oko, other Planeswalkers, problematic creatures, you name it. Plague Engineer, speaking of problematic creatures, Plague Man is still a really nice tribal hoser, really good against other X1 decks. 2 copies of Force of Vigor, which is really cool. We can beat, again, cards like Needle, cards like Ensnaring Bridge, or any number of other things, and there are a lot of artifact-based strategies where it's just good removal, good free interaction, playing really well along the turbo combo plan by being a free spell. Even if it's card disadvantage, we don't care, we're just going for the win, hosing the opponent along the way. Grafdigger's Cage against those creature-based tutor decks, and perhaps more importantly against graveyard-based decks. Veil of Summer, everybody who watches this channel's least favorite card, and if it's not, it should be. No explanation or introduction needed. And 3 copies of Sylvan Safekeeper, which is one that my modern viewers might not really be familiar with, but this is more Not of This World style effects, and whereas Not of This World is just kind of a 1-for-1 trade most of the time, Sylvan Safekeeper is, more vulnerable to removal. You're showing it, you're not going to blow them out with a Not of This World that they don't know is coming. You're showing them that you have ways to protect your Merit Lage after it's been made, but it's still very, very strong because by the time you combo off, especially if it's a game that has gone to the mid-game, maybe you have like 3 lands left over, and therefore you can beat 3 removal spells and or abilities like Karakas, things like that. So Sylvan Safekeeper, a very nice thing to side in against white decks and against other decks that can deal with a resolved Merit Lage. Alright guys, so that was my noob deck tech. Again, this is my first time ever really diving headfirst into Legacy, so if you want to add anything in the comments for the benefit of the viewers who are maybe new to the deck, please do. In the meantime, that's about all I've got for the intro, so thank you once again to Mana Handler and Wizard of Lizard. Thank you so much to all other supporters, especially the Patreon supporters, and let's dive into some gameplay, which is going to be mixed gameplay from the tournament practice lobby and the league play, and at the end I will give you a full wrap-up on how my debut leagues went. Let's get into it. Alright guys, here we go. So this is a pretty cool hand to open on just because it looks totally unreasonable from the modern perspective, or indeed from the perspective of any kind of a normal deck, any kind of a mid-range deck that I'm used to playing anyway. But in my view, it was actually keepable because Elvish Spirit Guide is going to facilitate Sylvan Scrying on turn 1 if that's the play we want to make, and then that in turn will open up the rest of our hand if we get the right land, right? So opponent's going to mulligan all the way down to 5, pretty good news for us, and going to go Plains into Mother of Runes. So even though I don't know much about Legacy, I pretty clearly identify this as Death and Taxes. And then we've drawn Vampire Hexmage, which makes our following play even more obvious in my view. We're going to go get Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. That's going to enable us to double spell, maybe if we want to, Thoughtseize into Duress next turn. And then from there, we've got the turn 3 combo lined up. But the opponent shows us Karakas. So Karakas, of course, as we mentioned in the deck tech, is a card that can beat Merit Lage, and the opponent also plays Thalia, so no double spelling for us. We draw a backup copy of Hexmage, and we're just going to spend the turn paying 2 mana for a Thoughtseize, seeing 2 copies of a currently uncastable Recruiter of the Guard. Back to OP, and they're going to find a second mom and going to start putting us on the old 9-turn clock with Thalia, leaving their mothers open for protection and leaving Karakas open to beat our combo as well. We, however, have drawn Not of This World, so our top decks have been really, really nice. Remember, our first draw was Vampire Hexmage, and our second one is Not of This World, a way to protect a resolved Merit Lage. So, opponent going after us with Thalia here. They have played Rishadan Port, and on their end step, we're going to make the thing. We're going to make the Avatar. And obviously, Karakas is the card to beat, and we have the beating of it in the form of Not of This World, so they put the activated ability on the stack, and Not of This World, for those who haven't looked at it closely, counter target spell or ability that targets a permanent you control, and it is free if it targets a creature you control of power 7 or greater. And indeed it does, and that is simply gonna do it. Game 2 against that same opponent, my friends. With some of these, I'll show you the full match. With some, I'll just show you a game. Basically, I'm trying to find a variety of entertaining gameplay, and to that end, we're going to be a little more judicious with what we show. So, opponent is going to keep 7 this time, and it's Karakas into Aether Vial. Our hand definitely had some things going for it, but the draw of Thoughtseize makes it way, way better, because now we can either disrupt and then continue disrupting with Abrupt Decay, or we can Thoughtseize our way to a clear combo turn, so the opponent has a second Karakas. I don't know how many they play, but obviously that means we're not going to beat it with like a Ghost Quarter, and we're going to have to find a way to deal with it in order to successfully combo off and get over the line with it. On the other hand, it does mean that we have some potential clunk in the opponent's mana base between the dual legendary land and the wasteland, and maybe we can Abrupt Decay the Aether Vial as well. So what do we take with the Thoughtseize? Well, definitely not Batterskull. That's kind of the least of our worries right now. So either Path or Swords to Plowshares. Again, whenever I make like a corner case decision like this, take it with a grain of salt, because I am, again, brand new to Legacy, but my thinking there was we only played 2 basics. We might draw the second one. I don't want to give them a no downside removal if we have to end up like fighting our way through it. Whereas, if I had no basics in hand, maybe we value getting that basic more highly. But remember, Swords to Plowshares will gain us 20 life if they, if we're priced into comboing off into it and we've somehow answered Karakas, right? So opponent will just immediately, sorry, we've got all kinds of lag going on with the client here. Opponent will just immediately deploy and then wasteland our Bayou. But due to the power, sorry again for clicking through that, of Elvish Spirit Guide, we get to respond. So we make green, we crop rotate, and we crop rotate into Urborg, which I thought was an interesting one because it allows us to either, again, go on the Abrupt Decay plan or have the combo all ready to go with Vampire Hexmage should we have drawn Dark Depths. And of course, we'd still have to worry about Karakas, but for now, we go get Urborg. Our mana is pretty well fixed, and we're going to decay the Vial, hopefully, keeping them pretty far away from the mana they need to do anything proactive. They do, however, draw planes, and they say go. We draw Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle, just fine with me. I'm going to go ahead and run out Vampire Hexmage because I suspect that for fear of discard, they might want to run out a card like Swords to Plowshares, and indeed they do. So we'll just take that trade. It's kind of like having drawn a discard spell. And then we still have Thespian Stage. We're not without a way to combo off. The opponent, however, will continue disrupting us. They've drawn Rishadan Port. I thought about using my turn to maybe copy their own port or copy their Karakas, because remember, Thespian Stage is not just a combo piece. It can be a utility land as well, especially with respect to the opponent's utility lands, right? But I said, well, in case we draw something that we really want to cast this turn, I'll just let that resolve. Instead, we've drawn Bayou. Now, drawing more lands in the face of the opponent really only disrupting us meaningfully via Rishadan Port, that's totally fine. I don't remember if I mentioned that Needle is now naming Karakas, so we're just going to try to kind of find the combo and kill them before anything else happens. So in response, this time I do decide to copy their port, and we've drawn Not of This World, so now we can beat even a top-decked answer. And the opponent will tap low for Flicker Wisp, but they're not fully tapped out because they get to flicker one of their planes, just trying to get a little bit of pressure online. Now would be a perfect time to do exactly what we do, which is draw Dark Depths. Beautiful. You love to see it. So, my general rule as somebody who is learning Legacy is if we're suspicious of Wasteland, we main phase the combo. If we're not so much suspicious of Wasteland, or maybe if we have it shut off by Pithing Needle or something else, then maybe we can wait till their end step. But Not of This World is an additional incentive to just main phase it right now, right? Just gotta play around Wasteland, because Not of This World does not protect our lands, but it does protect Merit Lage. So we've made the flyer. Does the opponent have an answer? And they're gonna play the second copy of Karakas, losing one to the legendary rule, just trying to get 4 mana for Palace Jailer, and that's going to be the play, but Not of This World will protect us, and then Palace Jailer resolves, they'll get the Monarch trigger. They've still got 4 cards in hand, only one of them is bad, potentially with Batterskull. They're going to draw another for turn, so we don't have lethal because, of course, Flicker Wisp is a blocker. We're going to give the opponent an out, or are we? We draw Sylvan Scrying, so what's the line? Well, let's go ahead and scry for Seijri Steppe, play it out of hand, target Merit Lage, the opponent scoops to that, but of course what we would do is give ourselves protection from white and swing in for lethal. So I had a lot of games in the tournament practice lobby that went something like this. If we are able to keep a balanced 7, and the opponent has some kind of an issue. In Game 1, their issue was mulling down to 5. In Game 2, their issue was they had a lot to like about their hand, but they had the awkwardness of double Karakas. We were able to interact profitably with Thoughtseize into Abrupt Decay, and from there, they were stumbling. They still managed to put together a fair amount of things that could have dealt with us, but again, we were kind of flush with resources, and we were able to answer each and every one of their ways to interact with Merit Lage. So this is how the deck is supposed to work. Obviously there will be times where the opponent's cards just don't line up against yours, and you just waltz your way to a turn 3 kill, or even a turn 2 kill occasionally. But in this case, the opponent nominally had a lot of ways to beat us, but in practice we were able to get through all of them. So good game. On the draw here for the next round, and our hand, it must be said, is pretty awkward, so we do take a mulligan, and we mulligan to a hand that has all of the disruption and none of the combo, but in a blind Game 1, I think that is better than going to 5. Nevertheless, I do value my land drops and my acceleration highly enough to bottom a Duress. I could really see that second Duress whiffing after we have 1 Duress and 2 Thoughtseizes, but it comes back to haunt us. We draw another Duress right off the top, and frankly, with the opponent going turn 1 Delver, maybe our Duresses are going to be great anyway. I don't know which, turn 1 lands are likely to suggest Thoughtseize and which ones are likely not to suggest Thoughtseize. A more experienced Legacy player certainly might, but with that in mind, I said, well, we'll just risk the Thoughtseize, and we are just going to fix our mana, you know, we're going to get our duel. And if they have it, so be it. Opponent will attempt to daze us, but we, with the beauty of Elvish Spirit Guide, which is a card that just has so many really cool use cases, that being one of them. We saw that one with crop rotation, even though we were fully tapped out, able to beat Wasteland in round 1. This card is really delightful to play with in this shell. So with the power of Elvish Spirit Guide, we beat the opponent's daze, and we see Chain Lightning and Force of Negation. So pretty easy take there of Chain Lightning, because the Force is going to get taken next turn by one of our many discard spells. The opponent will immediately flip Delver, which is a little bit worrying, and they will draw Daze and redeploy that tropical island. So Daze is once again a card that we can beat, but yeah, the pressure from Delver just got a lot scarier. So we play out a land first to play around that Daze, and then we go ahead and Duress it away. Back to the OP, and they will deploy the Volcanic Island, Force and 1 unknown in hand. And by the way, we have drawn Thespian stage for turn, which is definitely nice, one half of the combo. And now we've drawn Urborg, so this could in theory allow us to double spell if we want to. And we see Force of Negation, which we knew about, and Delver of Secret, so I guess we want to. The Thoughtseizes are starting to add up. We are down to 9, so we're dead in 3 hits to Delver. Maybe even 2 hits if they find another Chain Lightning, or I assume Lightning Bolt. If they're playing Chain Lightning, they're got to be playing Lightning Bolt, right? We're down to 6. Back to the opponent. We've drawn another Thoughtseize. Definitely a little awkward. I choose to slow roll the Ghost Quarter here. You know, just kind of concealing information more than anything else. And we go down to 3, back to the opponent. They pass again, and then we need to draw the out, and we do. We draw Crop Rotation. So I say, hey, I can't see a huge difference between being at 3 and being at 1. I'm sure there could be some things I'm not thinking of, but I'm going to go ahead and clear the way with Thoughtseize, see what the opponent's got. Well, they have Force of Will and Oko, Thief of Crowns. Just a little bit of a digression here. I think this will come up later in the replay. My broad experience in Legacy has been like, I have been happy losing to cards that are classic Legacy staples, like Delver of Secrets, Daze, some of the Reanimator decks, even getting turn 1'd by Storm. This stuff is all kind of cool to me. And I don't think it's just purely the novelty of it being new to me. And genuinely, like, I don't see a problem with the design of those cards, even though sometimes they're very, very individually powerful, or very, very powerful in a certain shell. My negative Legacy experiences have all been at the hands of new design. Oko, Veil of Summer, Karn the Great Creator. What else am I forgetting? I guess Uro is not a big deal to this deck, but if it was, I could say Uro as well. That's just where my head is at with this stuff. So anyway, there's my rant, but we clear the way for Crop Rotation. We take the Oko because Oko is a way for them to beat Dark Depths if they drew a land, and if we were main phasing it, which we didn't. And then opponent's got nothing here, so here comes Merit Lage, and the opponent does have the block here, and indeed they assign the block, giving them one more turn to draw a Lightning Bolt or some other out, and their top deck is Brainstorm, a little bit scary. But then they go into Ponder. Okay, so now they need a red land into a Bolt. Well, they have the red land, but it is just another blue cantrip preordained. So with the opponent digging so deep, you've got to figure it was only a matter of time before they found some way to beat Merit Lage, or perhaps more likely some way to just bolt us in the face for lethal. However, that flood of cantrips came just one turn too late for the opponent, so about as close as you can get. Our Crop Rotation came off the top right in time. After mulling to 6 and being under pressure from a T1 Delver on the play that flipped right away, our discard was able to fight us through all of that blue interaction and some of the red interaction and blue-green interaction, in fact, and we were able to get there just in time. Game 2 here, in a bit of a weird keep for sure, but I don't want to mulligan in this interactive matchup, and Veil of Summer is a real knockout punch, and if we can draw Urborg, we'll have absolutely everything. We'll have the ability to cast Duress, we'll have the combo online, we'll have Veil of Summer maybe to protect something that we're up to, and we've drawn Crop Rotation, so in theory that could lead to a Urborg that we've been looking for. However, gotta try to find a good window for it, right? Now, maybe this was a good window. Maybe we're supposed to respond to the brainstorm here. I don't know. I decided to take it a little bit more slowly, see what they did here. Maybe try to naturally draw the land and not have to risk 2-for-1ing myself with a crop rotation, right? Because crop rotation requires the sacrifice of a land as a cost to cast the spell, so it's very, very weak to permission, and with Duress to check for permission and Veil of Summer to beat it, if we can just get the right lands, I decide to play it slow. Draw of another crop rotation is very awkward for that reason, but we continue committing to the slow plan. Just run out the Seijri Steppe, which feels pretty bad, right? But we're just making land drops, and the opponent's cantripping up a Storm, playing a Delver, and then here on the end step, because Seijri Steppe is somewhat expendable and because we have 2 crop rotations, I do decide to go for it. We'll see if the opponent has anything here, and so they are going to daze. So they bounce a land, they're going to daze it, we can't pay for it, feels bad, but maybe, just maybe, we fought our way through. So we deploy Karakas. I'm going to float white so that I can maybe cast a Pithing Needle after this resolves, or, see what else we can do. Even just maybe pay for another daze, and we go for another crop rotation. The opponent does indeed have the second daze, but hey, we can pay for it. But then they have the third daze. So the triple daze progression from OP, definitely a bit of a welcome to legacy moment for Grimflayer. So we have 2-for-1'd ourselves twice, pitching our most expendable lands to do so, but still not drawing natural black lands, which is why we were feeling forced into that kind of desperate play and getting pretty punished for it. But the opponent at least has tempoed themselves out by having to bounce 3 of their own lands. Then I'm just kind of going for a somewhat blind Pithing Needle, and the opponent will decide to Force of Will, pitching Oko. That's totally fine with me. And we've drawn Sylvan Scrying, so now any land is a good draw, besides another Dark Depths, I guess, right? And the flipped Delver, I guess... Sorry, I wasn't tracking that. I don't remember when the Delver flipped. Is this a new Oko, or is this the one they pitched? I'm not certain. No, I'm sorry. I've got that all backwards. They have flipped Spell Pierce, so we know about Spell Pierce. Thankfully, though, we at long last have drawn a natural black land, so we're going to go lead on Duress. The opponent's going to go for a Spell Pierce, and now it's our time to shine. Veil of Summer, do we get him? Do we get him? Well, maybe. The opponent first will Surgical in response, targeting crop rotation. Sure. So the 2 remaining rotations go by the wayside, out of our deck and into exile, and then the opponent also gets hand information, but our things will resolve and our Duress will whiff. They only have a tropical island left in hand, but we still did get to come out ahead there, drawing a card off of Veil of Summer and forcing a Surgical out of their hand. And we've got a pair of Sylvan Scryings, and the opponent has a Delver pressuring us, but we've still got a fair amount of time. And we were all set up to tutor the Thespian stage, but as it turns out, we don't really need to. We just top deck it naturally. And here on the opponent's upkeep, I decide to go for Dark Depths again. My knowledge here is pretty limited, but I'm thinking even a 3-color deck could well play Wasteland. And if we are worried about something, maybe it's a card like Stifle, so we'll make them use that on their upkeep, use their mana, right? If they have it. So we go for the Dark Depths and no Stifle. The opponent shows us a 4th land. They're at least a little bit flooded. Let's go for the kill here, or at least force the chump block, I should say. And indeed, the chump block is what happens. So second main Sylvan Scrying just to do something and, develop our mana a little bit. I went for Thespian Stage because it can be used to cast spells, whereas Dark Depths cannot, and if we're going to get something, we might as well rebuild one part of the combo. Another thing to do there, I guess, would have been to go get Seijri Steppe, if it was not already something that we used to crop rotate and play it out of hand. So, maybe we get another utility land there, like Ghost Quarter or Bojuka Bog. I don't really know. I just went for the rebuild option, and as it turns out, we didn't need it, and we didn't need a utility land either. The opponent just didn't have the beating of Merit Lich. So we were soft, maybe to some kind of bounce effect, certainly to an Oko off the top, but I think we were in a position where really making them have it was correct there. They didn't have it, and that's a cool way to get a win through a triple daze progression against Delver. Okay, so now it's time for a special kind of interlude in our games here. I mentioned how generous Wizard of Lizard and Mana Handler were in funding the Donation League. Mana Handler also generously offered to give me a little bit of one-on-one training. And that's exactly what you're about to see here. A couple games against one of our donors here, against Mana Handler. And Mana Handler, of course, a legacy veteran. Myself, of course, a total noob. So we'll see how these go. But hey, he mulliganed to 6, and that's pretty cool. And we do see a hand that's a little bit hard for me to evaluate because, again, in this type of spot, an experienced Legacy player might immediately identify what type of blue deck this is, but in my case, I really don't know what it is. Maybe the card Impulse is a red flag for something in particular, but we see 2 Ponders, we see Icefang Quattle, and we see the aforementioned Impulse. My instinct there was not to take a Ponder, so it was either Impulse or Quattle. I took Quattle because it's a cantripper that also buys a turn by blocking Merit Lage, and indeed it's their only form of pressure, right? If we are failing to combo off and they are in the position where they want to start trying to end the game, that's another concern. But we have Pithing Needled their Prismatic Vista successfully, so we lead on that. Playing around Daze, that will resolve, and then we're going to go for it. Elvish Reclaimer as a follow-up play, so a pretty good first couple turns for us, honestly. We Thoughtseize an opponent that mulled to 6, and we get to Needle their only other land, and then we get to play a Reclaimer. Not bad, but the power of Ponder lets the opponent find another land. However, the power of our top deck lets us find Dark Depths, and we're going to immediately go for the combo. Throwing out a Vampire Hexmage, opponent will Brainstorm in response, and so, you know, I'm sure we can not necessarily assume anything about their hand after this, so I'll just delete it all and see if Hexmage resolves, but the opponent's paying a life. That's never a good sign, and they will pitch another Quattle to Force of Will, stymieing our grand plans for now. But Reclaimer is going to get across for 1 point of damage, and then we're going to pass it back to the opponent with Thespian Stage in the back pocket. Opponent has kept that Impulse around. They are going to fire it off on their own upkeep, and then find a snow-covered forest, pass back to us, and we're just going to play our Thespian Stage. I am not reading this as a Wasteland deck. As always, I could be wrong, but that was where my head was at. And then the opponent's got Show and Tell, so I'm told this is, I believe, Omnitell. I believe this is Omnitell, and, you know, kind of an interactive deck with a combo finish, basically. So we get to cheat in either our Lotus Petal or our Seijri Steppe. Both are pretty underwhelming. And opponent has the Omni part of Omnitell, right? Omniscience, so they can cast spells from their hand without paying their cost. But with only, I guess, 2 cards left in hand after they resolve this, I'm kind of holding out hope that they don't have a huge payoff. But the first card being Brainstorm, finding them a Cunning Wish, I guess that pretty much settles it when they have a tutor effect, right? Shared Summon. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards with different names. Reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your library. And remember, we have the combo all rolled up, so we'll have to see exactly what's going on. But then they show us Gristlebrand and Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. They're going to get to cast them both for free, take an extra turn after this one, and I suppose that is just enough for me to scoop. So that was definitely a pretty scary combo, you know, not something I'm used to seeing. I had to read half of the cards that they were comboing off with, and that's definitely another major welcome to Legacy moment. So we had good disruption. It was definitely pretty cool, and you know, we did assemble the combo in a relatively timely fashion, considering the amount of interacting we did and the amount of interaction the opponent had for us. Remember, they countered our Vampire Hexmage with Force of Will. We would have comboed off a turn before them if we'd been allowed to resolve that. So pretty close, but ultimately getting wrecked by Omnitell. And we're on to a different matchup with Mana Handler, and I'm at this point getting kind of wrecked by my mentor here, and he will win the die roll, but also mulligan to 6. Leading on Tundra, again, this is not something I can recognize. I'm just going to say, well, Duress seems good against any kind of blue deck, right? Let's lead on that. And we've drawn Dark Depths off the top for turn, so the hand was already pretty reasonable because we could have rotated using Elvish Spirit Guide to get Dark Depths, but now we don't even need to do that, right? So we're going to Duress and then take it from there. And we are against... Again, I still don't know. Blue-white control is the only thing that I can see, right? But we have double Force of Will, Brainstorm, and Spell Snare. I just went ahead and took away the Spell Snare. You know, taking away one Force of Will didn't seem correct to me there, and Spell Snare is a good, clean, tempo-positive trade for the opponent against our Vampire Hexmage. They've drawn something else for turn, and it is Standstill, so I'm told this is Sharkstill, I guess is the name of this deck, or something like that, and this is another card I really had to read, and I had to ask Mana Handler, well, how do I beat this card? Whenever a player casts a spell, sacrifice Standstill. If you do, each of that player's opponents draws 3 cards. Well, as it turns out, you know, our deck, if it has the right lands, can actually beat this just fine. So I'm going to conceal Dark Depths. I'm going to just take it a little bit more slowly. Again, I don't know if this is a Wasteland deck, but we draw Thespian stage, so it looks like we're not going to be the ones, hopefully, to have to break the standstill. And indeed, the opponent also is punished because they don't have a third land drop to make, at least not yet. So back to the OP. They are still stuck on 2 lands, and we've been drawing really good off the top, just drawing the exact lands we need. We've drawn a second copy of Dark Depths. Makes me even more sure that we should run the first one out, make them try to beat it, and, you know, I don't know what I'm playing around, but I chose to do it on the end step here, and indeed, on said end step with the opponent for the 3rd straight turn, having missed their 3rd land, we're going to go for it. So it resolves, and then will the opponent have any way to beat it? Well, it sure looks like it, but it is a Swords to Plowshares, and we're going to get to gain 20 life and draw 3 cards off of it, so I suppose that'll have to be okay with us, right? Now, it's still not over necessarily, but we get to begin on Thoughtseize here, see what the opponent's up to. They're going to Brainstorm in response. And with 5 cards in hand, they are going to Force of Negation, pitching another Standstill, which does seem pretty bad against us. I don't blame them for doing so. And then they've got double Force of Will plus 1 unknown in hand, so then we float green. I'm going to go Sylvan Scrying here. Opponent will Force of Will that as well, pitching yet another Standstill, so really seeing the namesake card, and then just deciding to scoop. Maybe the replay is showing them scooping a little prematurely, I'm not sure either. So every now and then with replays that'll happen, but either way, as you can see, you know, I chose to spend that turn disrupting, because we did have good disruption, we did have card advantage there. I also wanted Pithing Needle information, so we could play Dark Depths into Pithing Needle with the rest of our turn if we wanted to, and then of course we have the combo all rolled up with having cleared the way and having refueled our hand very nicely thanks to the opponent's standstill. So I had to show that one because I thought it was really something that, wow, why can't I think right now? What's the phrase I'm seeking? What's the phrase I'm looking for? It was really point in favor of the Dark Depths archetype that, like, even in light of the fact that the opponents got the standstill, right on curve, Force of Will, everything, we can still just draw lands and force them to make the first move, and we get the benefit from their standstill. Obviously, that is incredible. And that was my first time playing against this archetype in Legacy, so I imagine, though, that not too many decks can boast the ability to do that standstill is going to be a really hard card for a fair amount of decks to beat in that situation. So definitely +1 for Depths as an archetype on the basis of this. Also thought it was kind of funny that the opponent's swords let us gain 20 and draw 3. Not every day that coming from Modern, I see something like that. And I also had to throw myself a bone here because Mana Handler was absolutely crushing me. I think this is I know, in fact, actually, this was the only series I took off of him. I went 1-3 in matches against Mana Handler, definitely getting shown the ropes by a great Legacy player. In addition to the 2 archetypes you saw here, he also plays Esper Vile, and in those matches, they were close. I felt my deck was performing performing pretty well, but he just kind of had a little bit of everything. A lot of little things were not lining up my way, and he was eking out advantage while disrupting and answering, and eventually having inevitability that I could not beat. So thank you again, Mana Handler, not only for you and Wizard of Lizard donating the league, but also for taking the time to show me the ropes in a few really fun matches. Okay, back to playing against randos, and this hand has a lot of what I like. You know, it's got fast mana, it's got one piece of the combo and the ability to tutor the other, and it has a piece of disruption. I should say it has two pieces of the combo, and a way to tutor the missing half to combo with either. Opponent will go Mountain into Monastery Swiftspear, so a good old-fashioned aggressive red strategy is what we're seeing, and Duress seems really good against said strategy, and the opponent's got 2 copies of Fire Blast and 2 copies of Lava Dart. Mismatched Fire Blasts, I might add, so definitely a little bit scary in some ways, but I take a Lava Dart because the Fire Blasts are, which is normally a terrible discard target, by the way, but the opponent's got a handful of spells that all want them to sacrifice mountains, right? So definitely don't see double Fire Blast happening this game, so taking one seemed redundant. We might as well just basically save 2 life by taking away the front half of Lava Dart and the trigger that would go along with it. The opponent drew a really good card for turn, though. They drew Faithless Looting, they loot away 1 Fire Blast, and they get some prowess value. Definitely a really nice way to make that very awkward hand better. We have drawn Thoughtseize, and maybe it's my mid-range instincts kicking in, but that's where we want to lead, I think. And we Thoughtseize, take away that Bedlam Reveler, because we're getting pretty close to it. And, again, Fire Blast, maybe I'm not respecting it quite enough, but I'm trying to think of what one card they could have to help us beat it. I don't know. I kind of actually, in retrospect, remember not thinking about that decision perhaps as much as I should have, but we're not punished for it. The opponent doesn't shove all in for lethal. Again, remember that there is a tension between flashing back Lava Darts and using this Fire Blast, and we have got Dark Depths online, and we could have run out of Vampire Hexmage, but there doesn't seem to be any major need to, because we have the combo ready to roll. The opponent's got another Swifty, and so at the risk of potentially dying, and also assuming that the mono-red deck game 1 doesn't really have any way to bounce a Merit Lage or something, I make it before blocks, successfully block a Swifty, and that is about all the opponent has to say about it. So, maybe a more conventional burn progression with a more conventional mix of, like, normal burn spells as opposed to the ones that are really taxing the opponent's ability to flash back. We might have been in a bit of trouble against that. We might have had to take a different line, or we might have just not been able to overcome it. But as it was, a decent amount of disruption and a decently fast combo proved to be sufficient, so definitely one that is almost a pure race, with our interaction seeming to be more impactful than theirs. Game 2 against Burnin, this is a keep that I don't mind, because we've got, again, the combo with a little bit of redundancy baked in, and we've got Duress for interaction. Definitely pretty cool, and that is where we'll begin. We'll get Bayou for the need to cast Crop Rotation, and we will Duress OP. Having led on turn 1 Swifty, yet again we see Chain Lightning, Fire Blast, Lightning Bolt. This time we just take the Bolt. Run out that Lotus Petal. We are always holding up Crop Rotation here in case they play some kind of land destruction, which I don't really expect, but what do I know, right? OP's going Mountain into Chain Lightning, smacking us down to 13. We've drawn another Lotus Petal, and therefore we are actually in a pretty cool spot because we can rotate the Bayou away on the end step here, or before blockers if we deem that necessary, and then we can make the combo right then and there. So during attackers, that's what we're going to do. Fast mana OP, cashing in both Lotus Petals to combo off. And to make a blocker, and to that, the opponent will scoop. So some nice quick games there. Merit Lage showing up big there as a blocker. This is the first time in the league where that's really mattered, or the first time in the video, rather, where that has really mattered, and it will occasionally come up, as you can see here. So, again, you know, just I can't tell you the specific cards to play around, being new to Legacy, but I can tell you that the principle seems to be if the life total really matters, and if the opponent's on a mono-red deck, that seems to be just about the safest time, and the time where you have the most incentives to make Merit Lage, while still risking giving them a second main phase for whatever risks that could pose before you get to untap and attack as a blocker. And in this case, who knows whether blocking with Merit Lage made the difference between living and dying or not, but I think it was a really nice, different dimension for the combo. In many ways, comboing off with a creature token as your payoff, it does leave you vulnerable to all manner of other things that might not be able to interact with, for example, Tendrils of Corruption, right? So it's cool to show the upsides of being able to combo off with a creature as the payoff as well, and we reaped the benefits of said upsides here against Burn. On to the next one, my friends. We are winning the die roll, and we've got a hand that looks pretty ugly, but I did decide to keep it because having a whole lot of lands is, in some ways, kind of what the deck wants to do, right? And I went and tutored an Urborg because if we draw any discard spells, that'll let us cast those, and it will also allow us to combo off earlier using Dark Depths and Thespian Stage, right? So we're all set up. We're feeling okay. We're immune to opposing discard effects, right? But the opponent goes Swamp, Dark Ritual, and I start kind of sweating it a little bit. And then they will Entomb a Griselbrand, and then they will Animate Dead, restoring the Griselbrand to Unlife, and then activate him a couple times, filling up the hand, and then they will Unmask, seeing our hand and just going off with Petal, Ritual, Entomb, Children of Corliss, sacrificing Children of Corliss to gain a bunch of life in order to continue casting more spells, and then turn 1ing us with Tendrils of Agony. I said this earlier in the league, even though objectively this is unfair Magic, I didn't have any agency in the matchup, but admittedly I didn't mulligan toward agency either. I just said, well, let's try to combo off and, try to ignore the opponent's interaction by having no spells in hand and by, blanking their removal maybe, depending on what deck they're playing and so on and so forth. The opponent just had a faster combo here, but all things considered, I don't mind this. This was a league game. This was a league game with tickets on the line, play points on the line, and I just got turned 1'd. And I didn't even mind it. The things that really bother me are the things that actively punish interaction and or are ways that are catch-alls to beat anything the opponent's doing while also generating value, and that is all new design. Notice how old all of these cards are that they killed us with, everything from Dark Ritual, a classic, to Lotus Petal, to Entomb, to Tendrils of Agony, Chrome Mox. I don't mind losing to stuff like this. Again, my negative play experiences in Legacy have been the same as they were in Modern during the heyday of cards like Oko, Hogak, Uro, and especially Veil of Summer. So we get absolutely schooled here turn 1, and I'm not even mad. Alright guys, well I think we have to try to disrupt here in Game 2 against that Reanimator deck with a Storm finish, and Grafdigger's Cage is definitely the premier piece as far as I can tell. I haven't really showed you how I'm sideboarding because I'm not an expert. When I take the time to show people about sideboarding, I like to have some kind of expertise behind it. Your guess is probably better than mine in terms of how to optimally sideboard. So again, we're looking for some disruption since that was not forthcoming despite the hand being functional. It's only moderate speed combo, no disruption. I decided to throw it back, go to 6. And I'm a little leery about going to 5. They are a deck that I'm sure plays discard. We saw Unmask there in Game 1. So I decide that maybe a slightly faster combo or a similar speed combo with Pithing Needle for disruption is probably better than most 5s. Unless we're just mulling so aggressively for a Grafdigger's Cage, which maybe is the way to go in this matchup. I'm not sure. The opponent, I believe, mulliganed to 6. We name Pithing Needle on turn 1, with Pithing Needle, rather, we name Griselbrand, because that was their real go-off card in Game 1, the thing that started the whole chain. And the opponent will go turn 1 Lotus Petal into Faithless Looting, milling, or rather looting away Ashen Rider. Definitely a pretty scary one, not gonna lie. So The opponent will then reanimate Ashen Rider, pop our Urborg. They've got a 5/5 flyer, feels so bad. And even if we manage to combo off, we'll have to maybe attack through the Rider or try to remove it somehow. I don't even know if we have removal that hits this, actually. And it will get some kind of value on departing the battlefield, so feels pretty bad. Feels pretty bad. But we're holding up crop rotation rather than deploying another needle. Wouldn't exactly know what to name with that needle anyway, so I like crop rotation here. And I decide to hold it, hoping to take a cue from my top deck in terms of what to do with it and or for my turn. But the draw of Vampire Hexmage is an excellent one. It makes our line here pretty obvious. We go get basic forest, we rotate it away, finding Urborg, and then it is Vampire Hexmage time. And I don't expect Wasteland out of this deck, so we decide to just wait until their end step for the combo, so we're just going to pass. On our end step, opponent will Entomb a Grave Titan. Very interesting Entomb target, definitely very value positive. Wouldn't expect this to be a value-oriented matchup, but I don't know, maybe they only have one Ashen Rider to get, I'm not entirely certain. In any case, opponent will then main phase and Exhume, and I said, hey, this is kind of a heads-up play. It might not matter, but we can sacrifice Vampire Hexmage in response, combo off, and then get the Hexmage back. Kinda cool, kinda cool. Opponent's Grave Titan, though, a little bit better than our Hexmage, you have to assume, but Merit Lage is keeping their clock in check, and then we have also we have combo number 2 in the back pocket with this other Dark Depths. We've drawn Thespian Stage as well, but I think the obvious thing to do here is to try to batter through their defenses and then combo off again. So we attack to that end with Merit Lage. They're going to, of course, block with Ashen Rider and then exile our Merit Lage, which is their only real way to beat that card, probably, or at least one of the only ways. And that would be obviously just horribly bad for us if we didn't have the second combo all rolled up and ready to go. So definitely getting some value out of their Exhume and out of our top decks, and we're staying competitive against a really scary Reanimator progression. Opponent thinks, do we, don't we attack with the Grave Titan? In the end, they do, sending in the zombies as well. So before blockers, let's combo off and make the Merit Lage. Opponent will get some zombies, but we get to block the big guy. He's got Death Touch, but we've got Indestructible, so we're going to stick around. We go down to 10, and then the opponent will reanimate their Ashen Rider. So they got turn 1 Ashen Rider, and then I guess it was turn 2 Grave Titan, or maybe turn 3, I don't remember, into turn 4 reanimating another Ashen Rider. So that's some pretty rough stuff, my friends. I'm not going to lie. Some pretty rough stuff indeed. Just too much for the opponent to handle, and again, maybe if we had some of our other hate, we could have gotten somewhere, but we're kind of dead. We're in fact exactly dead on the battlefield, so we're just kind of duressing for fun. Again, this is a fact-finding mission for me, so I'm seeing a little bit more about what's in their hand, but maybe with the opponent entombing a Gristlebrand in response and going down to 0 cards in hand, maybe that's all the information we're going to get. So again, this was a league match. I got absolutely wrecked, and that, to me, was okay. The big problem I have with a lot of modern design is not present here. Now, that doesn't mean that no old card-based combo deck could ever not be a problem. Definitely could be, but this does not violate design principles as far as I'm concerned in the context of Legacy. Maybe it's still an overpowered deck, maybe some other deck like it is still overpowered. That's fine. You know, again, you rein those in if and when you have to. But to me, I don't get the same bad feelings losing to a deck like this as I do losing to Veil of Summer or losing to Hogak or Oko in Modern. So there you go, guys. A good old shellacking at the hands of Reanimator. And on we go to the next one with a hand that only has one half of the combo, but it has protection for it, and it has interaction with Duress. So I'm into it. I'm into the keep. And it's an Arkham's Astrolabe deck. We don't see those in Modern anymore now, do we? But they are definitely a part of the Legacy landscape. And I lead on Bayou here, while there is some incentive to lead on Urborg in case we top deck Hexmage. I decided that against an Astrolabe deck, we're likelier to probably want to play a little bit of a longer game, so I lead on Bayou, can facilitate other plays next turn perhaps, and we see the opponent's got a pair of cantrips and a Sylvan library along with the lands to utilize them. So again, looking a little bit more toward the long game, I take the library, also not really knowing what I'm up against. OP will brainstorm, and then they'll fetch, so I guess we can kind of dismiss their hand because they shuffled away at least some of those cards. Following up with a Ponder. So really sculpting the hand, presumably finding what they need to find, and we have top-decked Sylvan Scrying, definitely a pretty good one. Gives us something to do, lets us continue curving out, and also, most importantly, finds us that missing combo piece. So we're setting up for a middling speed combo, but we have interacted with a Duress, and will it be enough? I'm not sure. Here's Uro right on curve, one of my least favorite plays. Admittedly, not that impactful against us, as it is against like any other deck I play, but note that they go up to 21 life. So, you know, especially if they can escape him and or if they don't have to fetch Prismatic Vista thanks to our Urborg, maybe this buys them a turn where they don't die to the first Merit Lage hit. I decided to go for a main phase Sylvan Scrying there because already having the combo rolled up, I wouldn't mind trading that with some piece of permission. That seemed fine to me. But since it resolved, I just kind of said, you know what, let's continue committing to the long game. I don't know if they're a Wasteland deck, but I don't want to run out like my Thespian stage and get it Wastelanded and then kind of be in top deck mode. So I said, this seems like a fine window for Bojuka Bog, getting rid of a big graveyard with a lot of tasty stuff, including an Uro. And again, committing to that slower, grindier game plan. Not really where we want to be, but where I think our hand's cues are leading us, right? All the same, I think there was at least, it definitely would have been fine to like play out a stage there and see what happens, or maybe a Depths, because we have two of them. To that end, I do lead on a Depths here, and we've drawn Thoughtseize per turn, seems really good. And we'll Thoughtseize the opponent. Opponent will pitch Force of Negation, or excuse me, we'll pitch Ponder to Force of Negation. Definitely seems fine to me. And then I go for the absolute madman play of Elvish Spirit Guides. So, Elvish Spirit Guides not really helping us. We have more mana than we are ever realistically going to need. Even if they have a Wasteland, short of them having like a Wasteland loam package, we're going to have no troubles. And Spirit Guide can, you know, give them something to think about, whether it be pressuring Oko, getting their life total below 20, so Merit Lage is a one-shot, things like that, right? We've drawn Pithing Needle, another pretty good draw, just like Thoughtseize was. So we'll lead on Thespian stage, we will then follow up on Needle, naming Oko. And with Oko neutralized, and with the opponent only having one card in hand, I decide to swing out with the good old Spirit Guide, put them down to 19, and pass holding up the combo. They're showing me at least 4 colors. Maybe this is naive of me, but I'm thinking they maybe can't support Wasteland, so we'll wait to their end step, but again, I'm kind of shooting in the dark with all of that, but opponent will just pass, and we'll go for the combo here on their end step, and it'll resolve, but they have Swords to Plowshare, so we've got to try to beat this with Not of This World, which has been sitting in hand just for this moment since the beginning of the game. We get it, pretty nice, and we draw another Not of This World. Feels pretty good, man, not gonna lie, feels good. So, Merit Lage going for the swing. Opponent will gain life with the food tokens, so even though we kind of neutralized Uro's life gain, Oko still buying them another turn, but we've got another Dark Depths to play, we've got Not of This World for backup, and we don't even need it because whatever the opponent found cannot answer this thing. Is it a she? Is Merit Lage a she? I'm not sure. Cannot answer the Avatar. Game 2 against the Snowko player, and we've got a good interactive keep. Urborg really enabling it, as is very common in the deck. That's why we play 4 of an otherwise a very bad idea to play a 4 of for most legendary lands. You've got to have a good reason to do so, but we certainly do here. We lead on the Urborg in the hopes of optimistically drawing a Hexmage off the top to combo, and the opponent, I believe, having kept 7, has a very balanced hand with a Astrolabe turn 1, a couple Ponders waiting in the wings, Swords to Plowshares, Oko Thief of Crowns. I decide here to go ahead and take away Oko, reasoning that swords we can kind of take at our leisure before we decide to combo off with that Thoughtseize, at least that is the hope. And Oko is something that we just cannot afford to have resolve. So maybe they'll draw permission to protect the swords, and that would be bad. But it'd be even worse if they drew permission to protect the Oko, and then Oko just runs away with the game. Like, swords is just an answer to our combo. Oko is an answer and a win condition, right? So that's why I take the Oko there. They'll only cast one Ponder, though. They're going to represent removal and maybe permission with the other one. And we have drawn Pithing Needle. So let's lead on Thoughtseize for information here. Or not, because we get Veil of Summer, which has got me tiltin'. It's got me tiltin' even in retrospect, but hey, comes with the territory sometimes. And I've got to say, this is another league match that you're seeing. In way too many of my league matches, I just, lost to Veil of Summer. In this case, maybe we do, maybe we don't actively lose to it, but in many other cases, it was really close. I feel like if they were just trading 1-for-1 or not able to deal perhaps at all with my discard, I would have won some of the games that I ended up losing, because Veil of Summer is just so preposterously good against the card Thoughtseize. I will never ever stop complaining about it until it is made illegal. In at least Modern. Honestly, based on this experience, I would not be sad to see it go in Legacy either. But anyway, enough about that. Enough about my favorite topic. Opponent does play out the land we knew about. They've still got the Plow in hand. They've got 4 other unknowns. Feels bad. We have Not of This World, waiting to maybe beat the Plow, but again, getting our Thoughtseize veiled was pretty bad there. OP curving out with the lands, and it is back over to us. We have drawn Sylvan Scrying for a turn, a piece of action, and we'll go ahead and try to use it here, see what the opponent has to say about it, and whether they chose to let it resolve or whether they had no way to compete over it. I don't know, but we do get to tutor and then subsequently deploy Thespian's Stage, and the opponent thought about maybe doing something on the end step and then thought better of it. They're going to go to their turn. They're going to lead on a Ponder. And then it's Sylvan Library time. So a little bit scary, We already are a little bit leery of the opponent maybe having too many things to beat with 5 cards in hand. And now that they're going to draw 2 every turn, or not, that's not how that works. Now that they're going to draw 3 next turn if they want to, which I assume they're probably going to want to, that's definitely too much for us to realistically fade, the scary stuff from. So we're just going for it. We're just going to main phase the combo, and we have drawn a second copy of Not of This World. I have to say, sometimes this card looks pretty bad in opening hands, especially if you mulligan. A lot of my really feel-bad games came from being forced to take mulligans due to non-functional hands, and I'm not showing you so many of those because, especially in replay form, they just make for kind of nonsensical content, right? But when you are flush with resources, even if it's not a perfect curve-out, even if things are going bad, when you just simply have a high enough density of cards, Not of This World is pretty darn good. So drawing a second one, definitely pretty nice. We know about that Plow. And I guess that's maybe another reason to have main phased Merit Lage, because then they, for mana efficiency's sake, would be tempted to use that 1 Tundra to Plow, and then maybe they can't cast other permission, right? So who knows if that was a factor, but just another reason to main phase the Merit Lage there in my view. And Sylvan Library gets them 2 extra cards. They've got a full grip. And yet they lead on Astrolabe, so looking for some way to try to beat Merit Lage. They found a Plow. We've got another answer for it, Not of This World OP. And we've drawn Abrupt Decay. The interactive game is a little bit too late. So definitely not that excited about that draw. Would have loved to draw the 3rd Not of This World, frankly. But we do have Seijri Steppe. So what do we do here? Well, the opponent didn't just scoop, but they also were trying to resolve their interaction in the form of these Plows before we went to our draw step. So what can we read them for? Well, the only thing that I can think of is a blocker, and the only blocker that makes sense is our good friend Icefang Quattle. So to that end, in the main phase, I play Seijri Steppe, giving this protection from blue, which translate to protection from Quattle, which translates to the opponent scooping. So you've got to figure that's what they had, that's what they were kind of hanging their hat on, and we just barely squeaked through. Now, yes, granted, if they had something else here, we could maybe decay the library and try to compete, but then it is our total top deck mode against the 4-color value pile with still 5 or 6 cards in hand going into 6 or 7 on their turn. So I think it was really do or die there. We forced our way through a ton of interaction with Double Knot of this World followed by Seijri Steppe Natty from hand. So that was a really feel-good win. I hate Oko and I hate Veil of Summer, and it feels really good to squeeze over the line against both of those cards. Okay, another league match for you here, my friends, just like the last few have been, and once again, a hand that looks totally unplayable at first glance, just kind of like taking in the colors relative to the lands, I think is made keepable by the presence of Lotus Petal, so that is a big appeal to turbo depths, right? We've got the mana acceleration, but also the mana fixing. Opponent will, on the play once upon a time, into Cascading Cataracts, but then they will go Forest Pithing Needle, blind naming Polluted Delta. Thankfully, that does nothing against us, and it looks like some kind of big mana deck to me if I had to guess, and we are just kind of passing here, holding up Crop Rotation because we've got the combo all rolled up. Opponent will Glimmer Post into Pithing Needle, and so now I'm like, do we do anything in response? Probably not. We probably just let them name something, and they name Misty Rainforest, which is not the correct name, and it doesn't, again, do anything at all against us, but we don't even need to crop rotate, we don't even need to Sylvan Scry for anything, we just get to go off just like this, and do the big mana decks, do the post decks play Wasteland or other land destruction effects like Ghost Quarter? I have no idea, frankly, but I judged it with my limited knowledge to be safer to combo off main phase. Opponent will gain some life off of Glimmer Post, which I suppose is sufficient reason for them to continue playing even if they don't have any other answers. So I racked my brain a little bit thinking, well, what could a lands deck have? I chose to name Karakas with Pithing Needle. Again, I'm assuming that the lands deck has some kind of utility lands that can beat Merit Lich, with depths being a known quantity in the meta. Maybe that's wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was an okay blind name for a Legacy noob. And I also chose to slow roll Seijri Steppe because we don't have any kind of a meaningful value access that we're competing on with our cards, especially game 1 against a big mana deck, especially their board. So I decided, well, on the off chance they make some kind of blocker, I'll just slow roll the step, but opponent doesn't have anything here, and we get over the line in game 1. A reasonable enough keep, if you ask me, here for game 2. We've got acceleration, we've got a little disruption, and we do have crop rotation to find one half of the combo if we draw the other. So for now, we're kind of leading with the idea of disrupting early, comboing mid-game. We've drawn Pithing Needle. I chose to wait and see exactly what they do here. Maybe Abrupt Decay something if we want to. Maybe wait to see if there's anything meaningful they'll show us where we know Pithing Needle will be good rather than like blind naming Karakas like we did last game. So OP will once upon a time into Elvish Rejuvenator, and then they will Cloudpost into Pithing Needle on Vampire Hexmage, which is a relevant name for sure this time around. So end step, I'll choose to Abrupt Decay that. Wouldn't you know it, Veil of Summer. Again, this happened to me almost every league game. If the opponent was on green, they almost certainly had a major Veil-related blowout against us. It just feels like it should not be, and yet it is, So we continue drawing mana sources, which is not that exciting. We kind of don't really need them. Opponent starting to ramp here with Glimmer Post into Vesuva for Cloudpost off of Elvish Rejuvenator. And their life total, once again, above that magic number of 20. So a lot going against us, but we do draw Thespian stage, and not for the first time, our top decks of a land prove to be really, really nice. So we immediately just go for it. We will rotate away our Bayou, finding our namesake card, and we will use more fast mana to combo off and leave ourselves landless, but still with Pithing Needle and Elvish Spirit Guide. And I actually accidentally clicked through my turn here. If I hadn't done that, I likely would have made the same play I did in Game 1, which was to name Karakas with Pithing Needle. So hopefully that doesn't punish us. But the opponent will end step Surgical away our Dark Depths. That's kind of odd to do it on our end step before they see what they drew. That to me is a bad sign, because it says they just kind of have whatever they need to beat this anyway. Because of course you can Surgical on... They could Surgical on their own turn just as well, or indeed on our draw step, maybe to try to get a card out of our hand or something, but instead they... And that would be a little risky maybe, but... or maybe they wanted to see if it would force action out of us. I suppose that's a fair reason to just do it then and there. Maybe try to make us crop rotate, but we don't have a land to sacrifice. I don't know. In any case, opponent does have Primeval Titan to play, and they will go get Karakas. But it does enter tapped. We've got Urborg, so it's Urborg into Pithing Needle, naming Karakas, and then it's time to swing in. We don't have lethal because the posts are gaining them life, but we do put them down to 4. And, you know, if we had sat back, then Primeval Titan will die upon attacking, but my reasoning is that Titan here, while it is a clock, it is probably more than anything a way to tutor lands. So if they have meaningful lands to tutor, I think they would attack into us anyway. I think it's probably better to see if they have another non-Karakas land that can beat us, that we also cannot answer with our own draws, rather than sitting back and, you know, letting the big mana deck do big mana things, right? So as it turns out, they do get a way to shut off our attacks in the form of Glacial Chasm. The card that was on my radar was Maze of Ith, so I don't know if they don't play Maze of Ith in this list, or if they chose to get Glacial Chasm over Maze of Ith, but Maze of Ith, if I'm remembering the card correctly, would be a problem for us. Glacial Chasm obviously a problem too, but at least it's symmetrical. They will not be able to attack anymore after this, and it has cumulative upkeep, pay 2 life. So I'm kind of sanguine about this. I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm sad that we don't have the kill, but, you know, it is definitely a card that we might be able to beat anyway. And then we just rip Ghost Quarter off the top. So our ability to top deck lands is really, really good. And I say, well, let's just go for the win. Let's just try to GQ the Glacial Chasm. For those who maybe didn't get to fully read this card, in addition to everything I just said, it also has ETB sack a land, and it also says prevent all damage that would be dealt to you, which is really the main reason why it matters for us. So we're going to go for the win with GQ, but we're not the only ones who play crop rotation. OP will crop rotate for Vesuva copying Glacial Chasm before our GQ activated ability resolves. It's a little bit rough. So a nice little trick there from the big mana deck. I don't think we were wrong to go for it, but, you know, again, I am pretty brand new. So maybe a savvier player would have taken a different line there. Who knows? Opponent's got another Needle naming Ghost Quarter. Well, we only play one, so that's yet another irrelevant Needle against us. You know, not saying that was the wrong name, but it is one that we can not care about and feel pretty good that that's all the opponent had, despite having a million mana at their disposal. Glacial Chasm's starting to really take its toll. They cannot pay cumulative upkeep another time. They find Expedition Map, which is clearly a top deck. That's a little bit scary because it's like, okay, they surely have some other utility land to punish us with. What is it? Is it finally Maze of Ith? No, still not Maze of Ith. It is Eye of Ugin. Eye of Ugin, pretty scary, not gonna lie. Again, do they have something that can beat Merit Lage? I'm not necessarily certain, but that is definitely a potential out for them. We're going to use that Petal to play Elvish Reclaimer. We are still holding up crop rotation, but having used our Ghost Quarter, it doesn't really do anything that I can tell. You know, getting Seijri Steppe for protection is something that I was like, am I missing that? But no, it's just like we couldn't attack due to damage being prevented. So I don't think protection mattered there if I was reading that card correctly. And we are holding up crop rotation in case they have a different way to beat Merit Lage that does make protection live, right? Then we could tutor for that. And or, as always, if we need to beat a blocker next turn. But opponent will Eye of Ugin into... Did I get this right? I think they Eye of Ugin into Golos, and then they go get to tutor a land, and it's Glimmerpost. And then it's Primeval Titan getting unleashed, so opponent gained some life there, and then it's just another Glimmerpost and Vesuva copying Glimmerpost to gain an absolute ton of life there. Now we get to eat the Primeval Titan, and that's pretty awesome, but once again they're back up above 20, so an incredibly impressive showing in this regard from the big mana deck. Definitely really feeling punished, but at this point I'm kind of like, okay, we've won through an Eye of Ugin tutor effect, and we've won through a bunch of Titan triggers. What else do they really have that can beat us? But I guess they're tutoring for something again with Eye of Ugin, and it's Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. When you cast this spell, exile 2 target permanents, which is a line of text that most modern players are all too familiar with, and that's pretty much that. I did decide just to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly here to tutor with Seijri Steppe, but it wouldn't let you select colorless. Colorless, in fact, not a color. Feels bad, man, and that's pretty much it. So maybe I'm missing something. I'm sure I'm missing something. This is one of the more complicated games I've played against one of the less intuitive opposing decks, because there are just so many lands and other payoffs they can have that I'm not used to seeing. But why didn't they get Ulamog earlier was basically my big question. Again, like I said, having kind of won through all of the other stuff, I almost expected them to be out of tricks, and then they just go get Ulamog and just pretty much make it impossible for us to win from there. So again, maybe I missed something. In terms of their progression, I hope I didn't miss any lines, right? I hope I didn't miss any lines for our side of things, but that was a pretty rough way to lose. At the same time, it was kind of a cool game, and again, a very impressive showing from the Cloudpost deck, whatever this is called. I'll look up the name after the fact so I label it correctly, but all that life gain, all those crop rotation tricks and expedition map tricks and the sheer amount of lands they had, yeah, definitely a pretty crazy deck, but we still have Game 3. And in Game 3, we sadly have an unkeepable hand with the one land being Ghost Quarter. Gotta throw it back. This one is a keep. It's a totally functional, value 6 that also has one combo piece, and Elvish Reclaimer can slowly tutor another while we're interacting. So I'm feeling pretty okay about this keep, and I'm feeling even better when the opponent mulligans to 5, and we get to lead on discard. I do wish it was Thoughtseize and not Duress, but we'll take it. And hey, Duress is going to hit. Kind of interesting they didn't choose to fire off Extraction in a response on Verdant Catacombs. When I saw that, I was like, why didn't they do that? But maybe they have their reasons, and in any case, our Duress does connect, and then the opponent has just a hand of Vesuva, Glimmerpost, Titan, so they're pretty far away from Titan, just in terms of green mana, if nothing else. And, yeah, we are hopefully going to combo off before that, or we're just going to draw Thoughtseize and take away their only piece of action, which is Primeval Titan, them having drawn a forest. We also get to run out the Reclaimer, so not for the first time, Reclaimer part of a nice first couple turns, just insofar as we're getting to have really mana-efficient progressions, and then we go ahead and top deck Vampire Hexmage, which is another combo piece, but not one we actively need, or maybe we do, because it's going to be hard to tutor for, we'd need to draw another land, right, if we tutor for Thespian stage, and the opponent will needle our Reclaimer anyway, which I did just kind of let resolve, because I'm like, look, if they name a Reclaimer, we might not need the Reclaimer, and either way, no matter what they name, we can just kind of decay the needle. But it does buy the opponent a turn. We didn't get to tutor a land, but never punish because we have crop rotation right off the top. And we will rotate for Urborg to cast our Hexmage, and the rest, you know the line here by now. And once again, I'm not sure exactly what to play around, so I decide not to risk them having a Ghost Quarter or whatever, and we just do it on their upkeep. However, all of these posts that they're drawing and making copies of with Vesuva are once again gaining them life. So they're up to 24 life, and they have all the mana in the world, but clearly just in pure top deck mode with a forest and something either irrelevant or uncastable in hand. Also note Elvish Reclaimer getting beefy, getting nice and beefy here, but not quite enough to get over the line. Again, the life gain of the post deck is pretty wild how relevant it is even against our combo deck, right? So Pithing Needle, I just named Karakas again, not exactly sure what the best name is here. And then opponent seems to be in total top deck mode, and with 10 mana, I guess 11 mana at their disposal, what do you think they find? Well, it's obviously Ulamog again. So I've got to say, our progression was pretty amazing here. We disrupted really well. We curved out really well. We had some decent top decks. And the opponent mulliganed to 5, so I'm definitely not complaining overall. But as far as top decks that could beat us from this position, as far as I can tell, that's the only one. As far as I can tell, that's literally the only one. So obviously that feels all kinds of bad. We don't really have reach, so because the opponent's at 1 life, I feel obligated to keep kind of playing it out. The draw of Ghost Quarter is really annoying here, just because it breaks up their ability to make 10 mana right after the fact, just 1 turn too late. If I was thinking more clearly, I might have done that on their draw step, but in any case, we fire it off. The opponent will Pithing Needle Vampire Hexmage, and here comes the turn 2-turn clock, rather, of Ulamog. What can we draw? I don't really know, but Lotus Petal, definitely not it. So, oof. Major oof. And again, this was a league match. A lot of the league matches felt like they were so close yet so far. This was one where, in the position where they top-decked Ulamog, I think we were, again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm brand new to Legacy, but I think we were like 98% probably to win that. Maybe they have other outs that I'm not really thinking of. Maybe they do play Maze of Ith, but based on Game 2, I don't think they do, right? We had Karakas Needled. I don't think they play Maze of Ith. Glacial Chasm was not a good out because they're already at 1 life, and I don't know what else deals with Merit Lage besides Ulamog, right? So, and they also, remember, had to beat that Elvish Reclaimer 3-4 too. So again, I think that was the only card that beat us. Feels pretty bad, but so many of my league matches went just like that. Definitely pretty disheartening, but also not an indictment of the archetype at all. Just kind of like, being my first time out, I would have appreciated a few more lucky breaks than I actually got, but we still had lots of fun, lots of really interesting gameplay, and I'm going to show you more of it right now. Alright, another round of Turbo Depths for you, my friends, and this has got the combo all rolled up and we're on the play, so we're not interacting, but it's definitely still pretty sweet. And, you know, if we wanted to play a little bit more of a value game, we could maybe have let on Bayou into Reclaimer, or we could have used Spirit Guide to cast Reclaimer. I'm not sure, on average, how much you're supposed to do that in the blind, how aggressively you're supposed to do that in the blind, but we will see what happens. But either way, the opponent goes turn 1, Flooded Strand, into Island, into Ponder, and we go turn 2, Vampire Hexmage. And by the way, I'd just like to point out that one of the real pleasures of playing Legacy or Pauper, in other words, formats that use older cards, the player base is much more likely to use older lands as well. I love this one by Donato Giancola, and it's always nice to see the old-fashioned basic lands on the other side of the table. It's not always as nice to see the opponent casting free counter magic, but yet again, Elvish Spirit Guide is going to beat the opponent's days and force them into Force of Will, pitching Force of Negation. So they've got all the free counter magic and lots of stuff being done on the stack there. And the opponent has to kind of tempo themselves out a little bit. And they tempo themselves out a little bit further by going turn 2 Wasteland for Dark Depths. You understand, though, of course, why they do that, but we're never punished. We draw another Depths off the top. But lacking the other combo piece, I decide to play Bayou into Reclaimer, which is going to let us tutor next turn while also not losing our second Depths to a second Wasteland if they have one. But they don't have it. They deploy Island, and we rip Lotus Petal right off the top, and we are going to run out the Depths, pass, holding up Reclaimer's activated ability. OP is going to finally get a little pressure down, and they also make a second non-Wasteland land drop with that Flooded Strand. So let's go for the Reclaimer, see if anything happens here. We're going to pretty freely cash in an Urborg to do so, with another one waiting in hand. Note, if you haven't read the fine print on Reclaimer, the land that he tutors will come in tapped, which does shut off some lines that maybe if you're really paying attention, you're like, why didn't you combo more aggressively with a Reclaimer? In some instances, potentially including that one, well, it's because the land that he gets comes in tapped, so it's not always feasible where it otherwise might be if it entered untapped. But in any case, against the Wasteland deck, we just main phase our combo here, and Reclaimer beats are potentially live. I didn't exactly know what to do there, so I said, well, let's just hang back and bluff another tutor effect, give them something else to think about if we have another Elvish Spirit Guide in hand. Delver fails to flip, so the onus is on the opponent to beat our Merit Lage, and because Delver is no longer a potential blocker, so they then go to main phase and ponder, looking for Swords to Plowshares or something else. They don't find it, that is the game. And we're on to the next one, my friends. I want to show you a wide variety of opposing archetypes, so we're just kind of flying through them at this point. And we do have to mulligan that non-functional opener, and we go down to a 6 that looks like it's got a lot of things to dislike, right? Looks like it's got a lot of things to dislike. We've got no obvious synergies, and we've got to use our fast mana at a card disadvantage pretty aggressively. But if you look a little bit more closely, we might actually have kind of a nut draw. Not the most obvious, at least not to a novice like me, but we actually have the goods right in the opening hand. We just hope the opponent's not on an interactive deck, and the opponent will, keeping 7 on the play, go Forest into Green Sun's Zenith for Dryad Arbor. So, here goes nothing. We are going to play Karakas as the sacrificial lamb. We are going to rotate it into Dark Depths, and then we're going to use double Lotus Petal into turn 1 Vampire Hexmage, immediately comboing off. Just playing around Wasteland, I don't know what I'm up against, and hoping they don't have a way to deal with Merit Lage on their turn 2. We've got the turn 2 kill all lined up, and we see the opponent goes Forest into Glimpse of Nature into Nettle Sentinel. So this is Elves, and they just don't have anything. So that was a bit of a nut draw, not gonna lie. Again, one well-timed or well-placed piece of opposing disruption, whether it would have been permission for crop rotation, or a discard spell, or maybe some way to deal with a resolved Merit Lage, and we would have had virtually nothing. But this is the power of the archetype. Make them have it. If they don't have it, with a nut draw, they are dead T2. Since that one was so quick, we'll look at post side against Elves, and the opponent will keep 7, and we've got a little bit more of a modest hand in terms of the speed, but it's still a turn 2 combo with a turn 1 Thoughtseize and some fast mana, and some ability to play the game a little bit longer if we need to, so definitely another really good hand, but we're going to go with that turn 1 Thoughtseize plan, and the opponent having gone turn 1 Birchlore Rangers will show us a hand of Craterhoof Behemoth, which is the big payoff win con, after they combo off Green Sun Zenith. This card has me a little bit worried because it's a tutor effect, and I don't know if they can tutor for some creature that disrupts our plan in a meaningful way, but since I didn't know about that, and because Heritage Druid is an obvious go-off piece, especially if they draw something that really synergizes with it, I did decide to just slow them down as much as possible, prevent their top-end ceiling for their turn 2 and 3 as much as possible by taking away Druid. So, back to the opponent. And you love to see Elves on the other side of the table, at least I do. They're like my Pauper deck of choice if I ever get back into playing that format more regularly, which I plan to, and I think they're so cool. Birchlore Ranger is a core component of that deck, as it appears to be in Legacy. And they're going to Zenith just for a Dryad Arbor, so just kind of going a little bit wide this turn, sculpting the hand for turn 3, and we have drawn Elvish Spirit Guide, but don't exactly need her, because we have Hexmage off of the ever-powerful Urborg. And in this case, now that I know they're Elves, I'm not expecting Wasteland, so I'm going to wait till the opportune moment to combo off. And then, let's see here, the opponent will begin with Green Sun Zenith tutoring, and now I'm like, okay, can they tutor for something, for some creature that is going to stop us from being able to activate? I don't know, so I decided I don't think they're going to have a bounce effect to get, so why don't I combo off in response? Again, don't know how correct that was. If you want, you can let me know what I should and should not play around in a matchup like this, but I decided to go for it, and the opponent's going to do a little bit of trickery with Symbiote, bouncing Elvish Visionary, looking for some more action, and it's showing nothing happening here, but I do believe this is right where the opponent scooped it up. So they couldn't quite go off. Maybe disrupting by Thoughtseizing Heritage Druid was enough to slow them down, prevent them from really nut drawing us, and then we just had the combo nice and early. Turn 2 kill into turn 3 kill. Love to see it. And we carry on with more Turbo Depths action just for you, and opening on a no-lander. I'm sure there are some no-landers we keep, but despite the presence of Elvish Spirit Guide, rather, that is not one of them. We mulligan to a 6 that, I'm happy enough to bottom the redundant Hexmage and try to see where our Thoughtseize gets us, maybe draw a second land and take it from there. So opponent will keep 7. We will go Bayou into Thoughtseize, and we see a Storm deck. Definitely one of the Storm decks. I don't know enough to tell from this whether it's, what are they, the Epic Storm and Ad Nauseam Tendrils? Is that the nomenclature? I don't exactly know, but it's certainly one of those decks that tries to kill you by going off and finishing with Tendrils of Corruption or maybe some other spells. And we see Infernal Tutor and an opposing Thoughtseize, and the opposing Thoughtseize definitely sucks, but they also have Brainstorm and 2 pieces of mana production, so I just decide, hey, our hand, what are we really protecting from the Thoughtseize? Like, we're kind of top deck dependent anyway. We have enough redundancy where I think we just take away their tutor effect. We have to disrupt them. And they are a faster combo deck than us for the most part anyway, so taking the control role is probably more advisable when it's 50-50, even though I don't think that was. So that was my take there. They don't run out the Petal, and we draw a Petal of our own. Feels pretty good, so Petal into Sylvan Scrying to make a second land drop, and I just go for it. We're not holding up crop rotation this way, but again, they're a Storm deck. I'm not really expecting interaction to our land base, so let's just go get depths right now, because we know we're going to need it. And then opponent will Brainstorm into another Thoughtseize. Okay, they're starting to add up. They're starting to hurt us, but fortunately we have a second crop rotation where the first one came from, and it is a Forest off the top. So Forest is what we're going to cash in. And once again, just kind of main phasing this stuff. I don't expect them to have interaction for our land base, but maybe they play Permission. I kind of doubt it, but I don't know what I'm doing in that regard. So I think we have disrupted them enough and forced them to spend enough time disrupting us that we could reasonably hope that they wouldn't really have much to do here, but the fact that they're dumping out all of these rituals and dumping out indeed another Thoughtseize makes me sadly realize they have top-decked what they needed, and in this case it is Past in Flames. So time to hit play here while the opponent goes off. They flash back some more mana, and then they will go tutor up Tendrils of Agony, and that's going to do it. Alright, it is game 2 against Storm, my friends, and while I would like to see a Thoughtseize or something of that regard, we actually have a lot to like, including a ton of fast mana. So I'm going to go turn 1 Sylvan Scrying, go get that Dark Depths, and we've got the turn 2 combo all ready to roll. So back to the OP, and they will go Polluted Delta after a mulligan into Underground Sea for Ponder, and then it's back to us. And we've drawn Thoughtseize, even better. A really impressive curve out here from us, so let's clear the way with a Thoughtseize. We see Dark Ritual, Flusterstorm, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Preordain. Pretty easy take, I think, of Preordain there, because they have mana. Even if we take one of them, they'll have the other. We don't care about Flusterstorm, and then we can cast Vampire Hexmage off of our Lotus Petal. Opponent's just going to scoop to that. Leads me to believe they don't really have great answers to a resolved Merit Lage, so while they maybe could have drawn the perfect card off the top to let them combo off, they're just going to go on to Game 3. Alright guys, a bit of a weird hand on the draw against Storm. It had the ability to do some things, but the lack of black mana for our Duress, without using our Lotus Petal up, made me want to send that one back. And, you know, I don't know exactly how powerful Grafdigger's Cage is in this matchup, but they needed Past in Flames to combo off game 1. I've seen Echo of Eons out of these decks, and again, being no expert and having cards that I rated a little bit more, a little bit lower on the scale than Grafdigger's Cage, I think I brought in at least 2 here, but we will keep this 6. Seems reasonable enough. Veil of Summer can play a good role here. We do have that cage, we do have Duress, and we have crop rotation to start assembling our combo. The second cage, maybe not the most necessary draw I've ever had, but hey, we can beat a piece of removal or maybe a bounce effect on one of them, potentially, right? So I'm going to run out the cage because I want to be able to hold up Veil of Summer every turn, starting next turn, and maybe cage stops them from going off where Duress couldn't. I don't know. And again, if they play Permission, then Veil of Summer can help us beat Permission on our discard. So we go ahead, turn 2, lead on Urborg, go into Duress, and wouldn't you know it, Veil of Summer from OP, my least favorite play pattern, but hey, we're rocking it too, right? So I decide to hold up our Veil instead of, and our crop rotation for that matter, instead of playing out our second cage. Of course, we could not Thoughtseize with the Veil effect, and the opponent will Brainstorm, continue curving out with lands, and we get to get him right back. Veil your Thoughtseize. Feels good. The draw of Urborg feels a little bit less good, kind of the worst land we could draw there. We're getting a lot of the samey stuff in hand, but Thoughtseizes could be pretty good here. So we Thoughtseize, and we see 4 ways to ramp or accelerate mana, plus a Chain of Vapor. So Chain of Vapor is one way they can beat Grafdigger's Cage. Guess we're going to take that, and then we're going to go ahead and crop rotation while the coast is clear. And while we have the redundant Urborg, so in that sense, I suppose the second Urborg was not that bad of a draw at all. Lets us freely cash it in for a Dark Depths, then deploy the other one, and hey, we might as well play that other cage out at this point, right? So opponent in total top deck mode with all the mana, but none of the action that we know of. And passing back to us, and look at that, we draw crop rotation right off the top. Time to go for the combo, and that'll resolve. We've got Thespian Stage, and the opponent, again, in total top deck mode, seeming to not have drawn anything of relevance last turn. But now that they're taking all these actions, you're afraid that they kind of have. But it's not what I expected. They must have just drawn Tendrils of Agony here without any way to kill us. So they go ahead, or maybe just playing it a little bit more safe, I'm not exactly sure. But in either case, they just cast Petal into Ritual into Tendrils, which is definitely something. It's going to put them above 20 life, so they're not dead to the first hit from Merit Lage. And we'll make the combo on the end step, we'll make the token. And then we will Thoughtseize and see a hand of triple Cabal Ritual. I guess we just take one of those, but hey, we did kind of force them to only halfway combo off. We are putting them once again into total top deck mode for the second time. They've got no payoff, and then they will rip Ponder right off the top. A very scary draw, but will it be enough? So they're going to Ponder, and then they are going to Ritual. Not a good sign. Ritual into what have they found? They have found Peer into the Abyss. So they're going to, what did they draw? Just 20 cards, something like that? And then you've got to imagine it's all over from the crying. I guess I have a very slim hope that maybe Grafdigger's Cage is sufficient, but it's not. They just find another Tendrils of Agony, and that's going to do it. So again, I had a pretty bad record both in the league and in the tournament practice lobby against these Storm decks. It's probably the deck I lost the highest percentage of matches to. And am I siding optimally? Are we configured to beat this? Did I play optimally in all of my matches? I'm not sure about the answer to any of those questions, but despite the poor win rate against the deck, number one, I think we can beat it. And number two, I'm not left with a bad taste in my mouth. This is just like a sweet legacy combo deck, and maybe it's a bad matchup, but hey, every deck's going to have some of those, right? So we get Tendrilled upon, we get Stormed off upon yet again, and yeah, what are you going to do? Alright, another round here for you, and we've won the die roll this time, and we've got a solid turn 1 Duress hand that can lead to good things with both Hexmage and Sylvan Scrying for Dark Depths plus Thespian Stage, so we've got a lot to like. And we see what I believe is called, at least Goldfish calls it, Titan Stompy. It's kind of a mid-rangey deck that ramps pretty heavily and plays some prison pieces and some kind of main deck hate pieces. To me, it's kind of analogous in role and structure to the Gruul mid-range deck in Modern, even though it employs a different strategy and has, of course, many different cards. To me, the role is kind of analogous, right? So anyway, we take away Once Upon a Time. Opponent will go Mox Diamond, pitching Windswept Heath, play Cavern of Souls, naming Giant. And we have drawn Lotus Petal, so we'll run out the Petal. It is time to scry. Sylvan Scrying for Dark Depths, setting up for the combo next turn. And the opponent has ramped a little bit with that diamond, and let's see what they can do. It is Tireless Tracker. So I should have talked a little bit more about that decision. I'm thinking that my combo potential is fast enough that I don't care much about them ramping into Tracker and Titan a little bit ahead of schedule, just by 1 mana ahead of schedule to be exact. I would rather take Once Upon a Time because I don't know what they can find off of it to beat my combo, right? But in any case, it is Hexmage into Depth's Time. You guys know the drill by now. We have another Sylvan Scrying. I could have maybe used it, but I chose to play it a little bit closer to the chest. Maybe try to rebuild with that if need be, but doesn't matter. That's all the opponent needed to see. They take their draw step, and they're going to scoop it on up. Game 2 against Titan Stompy, and I really like Thoughtseize. We need a little bit of love with this hand to really go off, but we can perhaps manufacture that love with the help of Elvish Spirit Guide and Crop Rotation, Lotus Petal. We'll just have to see. So we will lead on that Swamp, and we will lead on Thoughtseize, because we're pretty sure that's going to be good. And miraculously, this time they don't have Veil of Summer for it, which is really what I was afraid of there. We see Ancient Tomb Wastelands, so a couple of pretty scary lands alongside Wooded Foothills. We also see Abrupt Decay, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and Ensnaring Bridge, so some reactive and defensive cards there besides the Dryad. I do therefore decide to take Dryad, and, while we could have used Petal to Duress or something, I chose not to. If they want to decay our Petal, maybe we get to Crop Rotate in response, or maybe something else interesting happens, but instead they run out that bridge before we can discard it away. So I'm thinking, of course, one other reason to have taken Dryad is that Thoughtseize cannot hit it, Thoughtseize can hit it, but Duress could not. And whatever they don't play this turn, we can take next turn with Duress. So that is indeed what's going down here, and we will kick it off with a Sylvan Scrying, playing a little bit of a longer game by tutoring Bayou and taking away the Abrupt Decay. The opponent has drawn a Bayou of their own, and we are still holding up Crop Rotation in the face of their Wasteland, thanks once again to Elvish Spirit Guide. So what has the opponent drawn? Well, opponent's drawn Tireless Tracker. In the context of their only lands hand after our couple discard spells, it's actually a really good draw. It's not an unbeatable one, but it's a very good draw at this stage for OP. And they run out the fetch land for max tracker value, not forcing the issue with Wasteland. And so we play out Dark Depths in a bold maneuver here to, press the issue. And while that would have been a good window for Abrupt Decay on the tracker, number one, the tracker might not be able to attack forever, especially if they start pumping it. And number two, I'm still not going to worry so much about it. I'm just going to worry about getting my own combo online and beating Ensnaring Bridge. That's kind of my thinking anyway, right? So, kind of a strange time for a Crop Rotation, but having let them go to their turn, I was starting to think, like, maybe we should have just done this on our turn before they get to run out of Wasteland. So it's all a little bit strange there, but my first thinking was let's try to beat their Wasteland with our Crop Rotation, and then, the more I thought about it, the more I said, nah, let's just go off. They probably can't beat a Resolved Merit Lage. This is a little annoying, actually, because it shows the opponent scooping here. And again, this will sometimes happen with replays. They show them scooping a turn or a half turn early. They did not, because they still had Ensnaring Bridge there. But of course, we decay the bridge, and that was pretty much that. So definitely a little bit of a weird one. in terms of how it ended, but you get the picture. Titan Stompy, they play cards like Wasteland, they can ramp, and they can also maybe tutor for the lands to a certain degree, but compared to that post deck that we faced a little bit earlier in the video, this seems like a pretty easy match to me. Not that we can't drop it, but I played it a few times in the league, or in the lobby rather, and without really knowing what I'm doing, I took him down every time. So definitely, if this matchup is in the meta, to me it seems like a good reason to play some depths. Okay, friends, the final round I'm showing you here, and I believe this was a fun one. We do have to mulligan that bad opening 7, but we have a reasonable and respectable 6, and I'm going to lead off with the Elvish Reclaimer. Can't bring myself to do the blind name of Pithing Needle when we have a proactive thing to do instead. And while I probably would have blind named Wasteland and it would have paid off, the opponent thankfully uses their Wasteland to deploy Aether Vial instead of just immediately Wastelanding us, which you do understand. You know, once they get their Vial online, they can then Wasteland to their heart's content, right? But it does give us the window to Needle Wasteland, and we've drawn Elvish Spirit Guide, which is kind of whatever at this stage, and we do attack with Reclaimer. Next turn, maybe Spirit Guide is good because it can help us tutor with a Reclaimer, but for now, we're just kind of seeing what the opponent's up to. And as it turns out, the opponent is up to Goblin shenanigans, so Goblin Pile Driver off Basic Mountain is the play, Aether Vial ticking up, and now that we have drawn another piece of fast mana, it is time to go sicko mode with our Elvish Reclaimer. So while, again, the Spirit Guide looked a little bit mediocre last turn, the fact that it was followed up by a Lotus Petal allows us to just, as I say, go sicko mode here, and we're not playing around. We know they have Wasteland. In case they have an answer to Pithing Needle, let's just main phase our combo. So out of nowhere, relative to what our hand was looking like, we get to combo on turn 3, putting a 20/20 blocker down in the face of a go-wide Goblin deck. Now, they are a combo deck as well, and they open on Conspicuous Snoop, maybe looking to try to combo off, but with Goblin Lackey on the top and staring down a Merit Lage, the opponent just scoops it up. Game 2 against Goblins, and we've got a nice hand with a good amount of disruption. Needle does a lot of work in this matchup, I think, and, you know, Thoughtseize and Abrupt Decay, especially in the opening hand, is very, very good too. Opponent with an identical play of Wasteland into Aether Vial, giving us a little bit of tension with what to name with Pithing Needle, but with Elvish Spirit Guide there, we do have the option to double Needle if we want to, because now we drew a second one, so on the other hand, we could also begin on Thoughtseize and get more information. Definitely kind of an interesting call. I think you really could have just gone double Needle there, but we also want a Thoughtseize for maximum information, and the sooner the better with a Thoughtseize, right? And we see a pretty powerful hand, frankly, in light of the fact that Aether Vial is really what's leveraging all of their ability to cast any of these spells. We have Goblin Crater Maker, which can blow up a Needle. We have Goblin Pile Driver for the clock. We have a second Vial, and we have Goblin Matron to tutor for whatever they need, removal combo, any of the above. So we do go Crater Maker here, and then we decide to pass. So another option, having chosen to lead on Thoughtseize, you know, we could name, again, Needle, we could name Wasteland with Needle, but we could also pass holding up Crop Rotation, which is another very interesting line. So that was a super intense turn 1, if you ask me, in the face of a pretty intense Goblins progression. They'll deploy that second Wasteland and the Aether Vial, and then they're just going to pass. No Wasteland activation quite yet. We've drawn Lotus Petal. That seems kind of good, honestly, in this context. And we'll go get a basic forest, and then we're going to name, we're going to run out Pithing Needle. First naming Wasteland, second Pithing Needle we'll name Aether Vial. So I think we've put ourselves in a pretty good position. We are still holding up Crop Rotation if we need to, but of course we'd prefer to use that to start finding our combo. Right now we've got Wasteland and Vial shut off, and we have beaten their Goblin Crater Maker, which would answer one of these things with Thoughtseize. So they need to draw a red land and a answer in order to really get anywhere. But what do you think the opponent's 2 draws have been? It was Badlands and his Goblin Crater Maker number 2, so definitely a little bit scary from the opponent here. And yeah, so I think our sequencing was fine, but has also, in a weird way, been punished. Opponent on our end step, after we draw Elvish Spirit Guide, will Crater Maker the Needle. In response, we are going to decay... the Needle, I should clarify, targeting Ether Vial. In response, we will decay their vial that was on 2, preventing them from getting a Goblin Matron out of the vial this turn, which I think is probably the best way to slow them down. And they've drawn another mountain, so that's fine. They've got Pile Driver all ready to be vialed in. Unfortunately, we draw another Lotus Petal here, still looking for one half of the combo so we can tutor another, but so far we don't have it. End step, they'll vial in good old Pile Driver. I love how many old bordered cards there are in the Goblins Legacy deck, makes me feel happy. And OP will kick off their main phase by vialing in Goblin Matron, tutoring Goblin Ringleader, a familiar play pattern out of the Goblins deck, going for value and I suppose a clock because it does have haste. They're going to have a moderate hit of only Gem Palm Incinerator plus Goblin War Chief. No real interactive cards, no combo pieces, just kind of, more go-wide stuff, which is kind of whatever. It's like forcing us to find some stuff quicker than we might otherwise, but it's not anything unbeatable. And sure enough, yet again, we managed to top deck a very relevant land. And we do that a lot, but to be fair, if they're a combo piece we're looking for, there are 8 of them, right? And then we use our other combo piece, we find our other combo piece with Crop Rotation. Once again, they're a Wasteland deck, even though we have Wasteland locked out, they could answer it, so let's just main phase our Merit Lage. Opponent finds Volrath Stronghold, another very cool old bordered card. And then they tank for a while, and then they attack with Goblin Matron, and I suppose the line here is to try to get us to block, so they can buy back Matron and then do I don't know what, I'm not exactly sure. Either way, I just take the hit. Opponent dirtles around with their lands for a little while here, and then I think, they just ended up scooping it up. So I guess they were trying to find a line, maybe dependent on what we did, maybe not so much dependent, I'm not exactly sure. Either way, they can't beat the Merit Lage, and that is a nice clean victory against the Gobos. Alright, my friends, so that was the record. That was the kind of broad-ranging overview of my first ever serious foray into Legacy. I brought you content from 12, I believe, maybe even 13, I need to go back and count. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was a dozen or more different matchups. In some cases, the full match, in some cases, just like the most relevant game from said match. But anyway, that was as broad of an overview as I am capable of providing, and I really want to thank, once again, Mana Handler and Wizard of Lizard for generously funding this donation league, and for being big fans of the channel, for supporting the channel, and for, in the case of Mana Handler, meeting me in the tournament practice lobby on the field of battle, kicking my butt a little bit, but allowing me to come away with at least one match win against that land still deck, the shark still deck, whatever it's called. Definitely some good times. So I do want to give you my wrap-up thoughts here about the deck as a whole, and also about my vision going forward as it regards to content in Legacy and in other non-modern formats. So first, let's talk about the deck. One of my favorite things about the deck is the fact that you are comboing off and you are aggressively interacting with the opponent's hand to do so. I love that in this format, a deck playing 8 discard spells and a combo that can kill as early as turn 2 exists. This is right up my alley because the more and more I play, the less and less free time I seem to have. Any regular viewer of the channel has heard my lamentations about that. So when I'm in new territory, especially if it's a new format, even though I really love the attrition-based mid-range style of play, I find myself gravitating more toward combo decks or more toward linear decks because they're easier to get wins with when I'm not an expert yet, and also the games go quicker. That's a huge quality of life upgrade for me, is when I get to play a lot of quick games as opposed to some really, really excruciatingly long games. And again, in a perfect world, I actually prefer a lot of long games, but with respect to my reality of day-to-day life, I like a lot of the quickness, but I don't like having no agency. I don't like lack of decision-making in decks, so Thoughtseize and Duress Clearing the way for a combo is perfect. It's right up my alley. I really also love the theme of the deck. I love the black-green base. I love the fact that we've got a Cold Snap legendary Snowland. Cold Snap is one of my favorite sets ever. And I love the snow subtype, especially when it used to be really janky and really bad. Back when I was a kitchen table player, forcing Cold Snap themed decks, winter themed decks that weren't any good. Of course, now we're all a little bit soured on the snow archetype because Astrolabe decks have been so OP for a while now, but thematically I still love myself a good snow presence, and we've got that here. I love the tricks you can play, especially with Elvish Spirit Guide being a really cool old bordered card that can be, it can accelerate your combo out, it can get a surprise crop rotation sprung on an unsuspecting opponent, activating a wasteland while we're tapped out, and on occasion it can be a board presence going Gray Ogre mode as well. A color-shifted Gray Ogre, what more do you want, right? Things that I also, we didn't really see any that I recall in the games that I showed you, but the presence of Plague Engineer in a deck like this is really sweet. We didn't see much action from Plague Man and Force of Vigor, but I love the green-based interaction. I love those cards. I love Abrupt Decay. I don't love Veil of Summer, but while it's in the format, it's nice to be able to use it. So, lots and lots to like. Also, I am an old vampires player as far as my kitchen table days go, and having a vampire as a core component of the combo, definitely very, very cool as well. So I'm a big fan of that, big fan of the green-black shell, really cool moments with Not of This World. Things that I don't like so much were in many ways just kind of learning curve things. Like, I felt some stress deploying Pithing Needle a lot of the time, and that's simply something that will get better and better with time if I got more legacy games in under my belt. I think in most of the games you saw here, I was using Needle justifiably, and maybe even fully correctly in many cases, but of course I like that surety. I like to have expertise with the cards I'm using, and I certainly don't have expertise with Pithing Needle, so being so reliant on Needle and so weak in some cases anyway to Wasteland is not my favorite. But like I said in the middle of the league, my real negative experience in Legacy was not even getting Wastelanded or turn-1'd by Storm or tempoed out by Delver. It was running into cards like Veil of Summer, Oko, Hogak, cards that I kinda hated in Modern, and I kinda hate them in Legacy still. Especially this one, especially Veil of Summer, but overall, I had enormous amounts of fun playing with this deck. I love the concept, I love the idea of it, and I also like that the Slow Deaths archetype exists, so you can, pack Dark Confidants, maybe a card like Sylvan Library, a way to give your opponents more things to think about, to operate on more axes, to grind out some value. When I first glanced at the list, I said, yeah, I like the look of Turbo Deaths better, but now that I've played it more, I'm like, you know what, I actually do really, really see the appeal of Slow Death. Now, having said all that, guys, I've got to give you the bad news. I showed you a mix of games from the leagues and from the practice lobby. I got crushed in the leagues. I had really frustrating experiences overall. I showed you some of the losses and some of the wins. But the losses that I did not show you were extremely frustrating. I'm talking about mulling to very mediocre 5s and 6s that really just depended on a turn 1 discard spell to stymie the opponent long enough for me to find what I needed, and inevitably just getting Veiled of Summered. That was bad. There were also an uncomfortable amount of moments like the one in the loss against the Post deck, where I think the only card they could have to beat me was Ulamog, and they just top deck it. That happened to me a lot against a lot of different decks, it seems to me. And furthermore, I actually ran into a lot of toxic players, and Legacy as a player base has a reputation for being the most welcoming, the most mature out of all the major formats, and I don't see any reason to dispute that consensus, but maybe it holds more true for paper. And this was only one small sample size relatively, but I had people tilting off in chat if I even took a game off of them with Dark Depths, and, spamming a bunch of crap, getting very, very angry. And in one of the wins that I didn't show you from the leagues, the opponent just, timed me out, and we were both on fast decks, and, the game should have been over in like 10 minutes, but they used their entire clock because they were just that salty. That doesn't really happen very often in Modern, so between my bad results and between the, somewhat toxic experience I had with the player base, those are two things that have me saying, even though I had a ton of fun playing this, getting to know Legacy, I love depths, I'm really glad that I did this, that kind of turned me off of the Legacy experience. But the final nail in the coffin is that Modern is pretty cool right now, and I had to spend a lot of time reading up on Legacy, playing a ton of practice games, doing all of the legwork to get myself up to an appropriate level where I could enter the leagues without punting left, right, and center, and where I could bring you this content where, even though I'm not an expert, I think the content was at least still relevant. I think the play was at least still acceptable and entertaining. It was not so bad that it takes away from those things, I hope. But it was a pretty big investment of time. Now, again, that's what the donors paid me for, and I'm very happy they did so. I'm very happy to have done it. But the point here, the takeaway, the conclusion that I'm drawing from this is that I simply don't have time. As much as I would like to, as much as I would like to tell myself, like, yeah, I can stay good, I can get good and stay good in Legacy using this deck, and I can get good and stay good in Pioneer using Mono Black Aggro. Frankly, guys, I don't think that is realistic for me. So this was a learning experience in so many ways, and it was a fun experience in so many ways, but my ultimate conclusion from it is that I will not be staying with Legacy, nor will I actually be staying with Pioneer for the foreseeable future, especially given the lack of bans in the format. So Modern is pretty good right now. I've got to reclaim my Modern expertise. I have not been able to play enough Modern lately, or Modern has been so unappealing to me lately that I've slipped a little bit. I'm no longer the expert that I no longer have the level of expertise that I once did. I need to reclaim it. So going forward, this was awesome, but I'm not going to do any more Legacy for the foreseeable future, nor am I going to do more Pioneer for the foreseeable future. It's just not realistic for my schedule, and I've got to focus where my player base and my viewer base and my supporter base overall wants me to focus, which is on Modern. And I'm going to keep Pauper in the back pocket in case Modern goes through a bad stretch, because Pauper is cheap to keep a couple decks around. I've got some decks that I've really enjoyed in Pauper. I've had actually probably the most fun playing Pauper out of any non-modern format, frankly, even though, again, Legacy is pretty sweet in many ways. I think I kind of like Pauper a little bit better. And Pauper is also the most different from Modern. Like, if there are cards that are new printings that are spoiling Modern, they're probably also spoiling Pioneer. And at this rate, they're probably also spoiling Legacy. That was another major conclusion that I took away from my many games that I played in preparation for making this video. So that's my plan going forward, guys. I'm sorry to disappoint you if you're a big Legacy aficionado. Mana Handler, I'm sorry especially if you were seeking to convert me to your ways of Legacy. Believe me, if I had the time, I would be sticking with this deck. This deck is awesome. I'm so glad you brought it to me. I'm so glad Wizard of Lizard gave you the assist in bringing it to me. But right now I've got to make the executive decision. So Modern and Pauper it is going forward with an overwhelming emphasis on Modern. However, as somebody who has played this deck and who has now seen and encountered a wide variety of Legacy decks, paradoxically enough, I will absolutely recommend this deck to you as an entry point into Legacy, because like I said, it is proactive, the games go really quickly, the price point is okay by Legacy standards, and that's also a very big selling point too, and I think the archetype has legs. You can build it a couple different ways depending on your preferences or the meta. You've got the turbo depths or the slow depths option. It could catch some cards and some upgrades in the future, and it is a ton of fun, really rewarding to make that combo, really fun to have some interaction along the way, so I can highly recommend this, but again, for my own purposes going forward, this is probably the last Legacy League you will see for quite some time. So there we go, my friends. Thank you so much once again to Wizard of Lizard and Mana Handler. Thank you to all other Patreon supporters as well, and thank you so much for watching. Back to Modern next, and let me know what you think. If you're kind of in my situation, I'm going to keep an open mind. Maybe some of you have a really strong case to make for Legacy. I'm not closing the door on it forever. I'm just telling you what my short-term to medium-term plans are. So, let me know if you have kind of dabbled in Legacy like I did here, what your takeaway was, what your experience was. And, if you want, you can give suggestions on the list and on the lines and stuff. But again, I don't plan on having the ability to focus on this format or this deck in the near future. So, if you want to do that for the benefit of other viewers and readers, please feel free. But otherwise, I will see you for the next video, which is probably going to be a Modern one. And I hope you guys like this, though. For my Modern guys, maybe it was a nice change of pace, and for the Legacy players out there, I hope I didn't play too poorly, and I hope even though I don't plan on persisting in the format, it was still cool to see a wide variety of Legacy gameplay. Again, I brought you about a dozen different matches. I hope you enjoyed some or all of them, and I hope to see you for the next video. Everybody out there, have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you soon.